Hey there. Okay, so now it is a little bit after 1:30. So 9, 10, 11, 12, it's been about 5.5 hours since we fed our starter. And I can tell you that's about an hour and a half longer than I was seeing this summer when my kitchen was a little bit warmer. So temperature definitely has an effect, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell because of the angle that I have my phone at, but if you can see, it has lost its dome shape. All three of the starters have started to flatten out. So that means it's time to get these into the dough, and I need to move pretty quickly because it's going to take me a while to do each one. So by the time I get to the third one, I want to try and make sure that starter hasn't started deflating. So really easy. What you do, take your dough. So this is the first dough we did. This was the mostly bread flour with the 75% hydration. And I'm gonna tear that. And since I typically use, like I said, might be a little bit high, but most of the percentages that I've seen have been about 15%, which is 150 grams. But I just have had good success with 200 grams. I feel comfortable with it. It ferments a little bit more quickly. So the argument is I may not get as much of that sourdough flavor, but I just feel like it works really well for me. So we're gonna go for 200 grams. We're sitting at 0 now. I love watching real, alive food do its thing. So what's gonna happen is in each one of these jars, I'm gonna have some sourdough starter left, which is good. All right, we're at 189, so I wanna be kind of careful. It's not a big deal if I'm off. Okay, so see if I can just take a little bit of that up. Okay, 201. So I do have some starter left in there. What I'll do, I'll use that in either this jar or more than one of them, depending on what else I want to do today. And I'll just go ahead, and that's my remaining starter. So that keeps, I don't know if I mentioned in this video, but in my starter videos, I talk about how it's tradition to name your starter. And my starter's name is Gertrude, but I call her Gertie. But I definitely don't want to give all of Gertie away. So this will be all that I need to feed her and keep her going. I did mention in a previous video that it wasn't uncommon. It's maybe a little less common nowadays, but it wasn't uncommon for starters to be hundreds of years old because they were passed down from generation to generation. My starter's only 8 months old, but she's super active. So right now I've poured the starter on top of the flour. And you could go ahead and add the salt at this point, but the salt will slow down the activity of the starter in the dough a little bit. So what I usually do is I'll put my starter in, mix it in, wait about 30 minutes, and then I'll add my salt after that. So as always, before I ever started the video, I washed my hands really well and rinsed them and dried them. So my hands are clean. What I do first is I kind of like I'm icing a cake, just to make it a little bit easier to get the starter mixed all the way through. I just go ahead and I push my starter like icing all over the top of my dough and kind of spread it around so that it's not just in one place in one lump. And I just kind of ice it like a cake. And then to mix, we're gonna do something very similar to a stretch and fold. And that is, you kind of cup your hand, you make like a curved spatula with your hand, and you try to get as much under the dough as you can. You get under it and lift and fold. And you get under it and lift and fold. Now that is the stretch and fold technique, but when we're mixing, we're gonna kind of keep doing it. And when I'm mixing, I give like a little bit of a push. And I'll turn so you can maybe see that a little bit better. And I'm just gonna keep doing that. And you can see just from that auto lease, so you see how, well, it's starting to tighten up because I've done this a few times, but you're getting a little bit of stretch in the dough. And that's from the hydration and the auto lease. And what I'm feeling right now as I'm mixing, which is why I like to use my hand, is I'm feeling the different consistencies of my dough and my starter, which tells me that's a good sign that I need to keep going, that it's not mixed. And as you do these stretch and folds, even when you're mixing, the gluten is starting to develop and your dough will do what's called tightening up. So the first couple of times you do it, it'll be really easy to lift it. And then as you go, it gets a little bit harder and the whole ball wants to come up. That's just called tightening up. And it's okay when you're mixing, you kind of want to work through that. When you get to the point where you're doing your stretch and folds, you're only going to do maybe like 4, like all 4 sides, and the dough will start to tighten up, and you want to leave it and let it rest. But I'll show you that in the next step. So right now, all we're doing is just mixing in that starter, and I'm just doing these tug and folds, stretch and folds. It's getting a little bit harder. And I will tell you, I'm left-handed, so I do all of this with my left hand. And when you're doing 3 doughs or 6 loaves, it's a workout. My arm is tired. All right, we're getting there. I'm not too concerned. I mean, I'd like for it to be mixed all the way through. The consistency to my hand is feeling a little bit more consistent all the way through, but we're gonna mix it again when we put the salt on. So I'm not overly concerned that it's all the way distributed, because we're gonna do that one more time when I do the salt. So I'm gonna wait about 30 minutes. I'm gonna put my 15 grams of salt in and we'll be ready to go. Now I'm gonna quickly do the other 2 so that I can get those starters into the doughs right away.